The San Diego Padres have been pretty bad. And they're playing a team this weekend that has also been pretty bad. Crazy how that works out, right? I'd be joined by Scott Bentley of the Locked On Tigers podcast. We're going to break down this weekend's series between the two teams, how both teams are faring heading into the deadline and such and such. So let's get started.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of not just the Locked On Padres podcast, but also the Locked On Tigers podcast. That's right. It's a crossover. We're doing two people. That's right. Two people on one podcast. This has never been done before. I'm being joined by, for the first time, I have never spoken with this man because we've had long-standing beef that dates back for years. Just hatred, a lot of vitriol, the Locked On chat going crazy. For the first time, Mr. Scott Bentley, host of the Locked On Tigers podcast. Sir, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm glad we could finally do this. We've tried crossovers a couple of times before, and just like it never lined up so that we were actually able to do it. So I'm glad that we're finally here and really squashing our long-standing beef.
Yeah, man, it's crazy because, like, with baseball, they only recently discovered a breakthrough. You know, I mean, we've got all sorts of talks about breakthroughs and technology happening around. Well, baseball, ladies and gentlemen, has been leading the charge because they figured out probably a good idea to have every team in your sport face each other at least once. So that's, it's revolutionary idea. It's the only sport that doesn't do it. But you know what? They figured it out. Better late than never. But that's part of the reason why we've never crossed over before. As a result, I feel like we don't know as much maybe about each other's teams. I mean, mine is kind of in the news a lot.
Your team's pretty public. I know quite a bit. We've been pretty publicly getting dragged through the mud, brother. I'm not going to lie to you, but I would understand how over the last 6 years, maybe the casual fan or just like a diehard Padres fan is not necessarily hip to what we're doing in Detroit here.
So that's the thing. What exactly are you doing in Detroit? Because I alluded to it at the top of the pod. It hasn't been going great for both teams. My perspective from afar has been, they had a lot of foreign prospects. You've got your Spencer Torkelson, and then they have their Riley Greenes, and then you bring in Javier Baez, you sign Eduardo Rodriguez, all these sort of things that dates back to last year. And it just doesn't seem to have been panning out. So just what's the general kind of vibe about this Tigers team before we get into, I guess, this weekend series in particular?
For sure, yeah. So, I mean, so the last time they made the postseason was 2014. And which is tied with the Angels for the longest drought in baseball. And the last time that they were like competitive, like in the second half of a season was 2016. They barely missed the postseason then. And then 2017, they blew it up. And that's the Verlander trade. That's the JD Martinez trade. That's Ian Kinsler. You know what I mean? Like they really got rid of like everybody, the entire core except for Miguel Cabrera in 2017. And since then, it's been a lot of losing, like year in and year out. I mean, there's really no other way around it. It's 2019, they lost 114 baseball games. It's been a long rebuild. It's been a long time, going on a decade without a like legitimate competitive baseball team at this point. And so this is year one of Scott Harris, new president of baseball operations, running the show. Al Avila was fired last year, who's been the GM throughout this entire rebuild up until I think it was August of last year. And so Harris, year one, so it's weird because like 2021, they overperformed and they actually had I think they won 77, maybe even game 74, somewhere around there. Like they had a mid 70s win total in 2021. And everybody was excited. And they were like, wow, we brought in AJ Hinch. Now we're supposed to lose 100 games this year. And look, like they turned around and we're almost 500. And like, that's just how like down bad the fan base is. And like almost 500 was like this magical season. And so then going into the 2022 season, as you said, they bring in Erod. They bring in, they make the Austin Meadows trade. They bring in Javi Baez. They call up Greene and Torkelson. Like they bring in a ton of reinforcements and presumed better talent for a team that was almost 500 in 2021, and they put up the worst offensive season, like legitimately like a bottom 5, depending on what metric you use, offensive season, like since they started putting cork in baseballs. So like it's really like was historically awful. Javi Baez has just completely forgotten how to hit since he's been here. He's been absolutely dreadful at the plate. Austin Meadows hasn't played baseball games, out with an anxiety issue for 2 years now. Erod missed almost all of last season with a like issue at home, like a family issue at home, and just like went MIA from the team for like 4 months last year. He's back this year and is great, but like it just everything went wrong. A ton of injuries. All of our top pitching prospects all got hurt. Like just a complete derailment of the momentum we had after 2021. And now we're at a point where I think everyone's realizing that 2021 was the outlier, not 2022, and that this team probably still has quite a long way to go. That being said, the AL Central is so bad that people have like this weird optimism, and like I don't blame them. We've been bad for so long. I don't care if it's at the expense of the first place team being 500. The Tigers are 8 games under 500 and 5 games out of first place. Like, so it's just this weird thing. We're heading into the deadline. I'm sure we'll kind of get into that conversation because I know you guys have a lot of decisions to be made heading into the deadline as well. But it's just this weird place to be in. We're still like not like they're 44 and 52, but like they're kind of in the division mix still. So like, do you hardcore sell? Do you like softcore sell? Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's the question. And we're facing that question of our own. And you talk about underperforming offenses. Like, yeah, the Padres offense hasn't been bottom 5 in like the last 20 years, as you alluded to, or whatever, with that one Tigers season.
Yeah.
And 2021, they did win 77 games, by the way, just to check.
Nice.
The Padres have been historically bad as an offense, not because they're worse than those Tigers in a vacuum, but just because the overall disappointment of having those players. The Tigers, you could be like, all right, Austin Meadows was kind of, we were hoping. Javi Baez, I mean, dare I say, the most relevant thing to happen for the time. I'm not even trying to be mean. It's going to be mean, though. Dare I say, like, the most relevant thing with the Tigers that has happened over the last few years is that one video of Javi Baez swinging at a ball that was closer to me in New Jersey before it was closer to the plate.
I don't even know what video you're talking about, because that could be 50 different videos. Like, I don't even know which one you're like specifically talking about.
He is just like, for a team that's been rebuilding for so long, it's just for them to take a swing on a guy like that instead of someone who's a little bit more steady as a star. Like, the upside of Javi Baez has been seen before. I mean, this is a guy who, you know, finished really high in MVP races before. He has a great glove, all that stuff, but a 90 WRC plus his first year, and somehow the following year a 63 WRC plus.
He has a sub 600 OPS. He's getting paid $25 million a year. He's got a 590 OPS, I think, right now.
It is every worry about Baez, his strikeout rate, all that stuff, and how it might age. Every single worry seems to have panned out and happened year one for them. So it's really been unfortunate for the Tigers in a lot of ways. But yeah, man, I mean, that's Central Division, and it's not like I think one of those teams is a sleeping giant. It's not like the White Sox or the Royals or who else is in this division?
The Twins.
The Guardians, like
first, and they're, I think, currently 2 games over 500 at the time.
2 games over 500. And the thing is that, like, you know, are we sure that all those maybe Cleveland's farm system might be a little bit exciting, and maybe Minnesota a tiny bit, but like White Sox and Royals don't have much. You know what I mean? So you guys,
White Sox are about to sell everybody too in a week and a half.
They have Robert, and that's it.
Right.
So for those two teams, it's just funny. Like, everyone makes the jokes about honestly, both Central divisions.
Yes.
You know, the National League Central has also been pretty rough. Granted, that division's weird. That the only team with a plus run differentials in third place.
Right.
But even still, the AL Central is becoming a meme. They're becoming the Charlotte Bobcats of baseball, just Cleveland Browns, whatever you want to call it. Really rough stuff. And we're going to keep talking about it because that's what we do here on this podcast. We're going to keep doing it, talking about both of these teams. And I want to talk about some of the things that might be going well for the Tigers, certain players. I'm very curious to see how those young guys are doing. But before we do that, I just want to give a shout out to, I played the wrong overlay there. I just want to give a shout out to eBay Motors. That's right, guys. This Padres and Locked On Tigers podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, something that the Padres have not been so good with lately. Same thing for the Tigers too. But don't worry, eBay Motors, they put their money where their mouth is. You know what I mean? Every single car part that you could need, they got you covered. And they have this eBay guaranteed fit sort of thing. Scott, if you've heard of this, that you're in the garage, right? It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. They give you like a little check mark to let you know which piece of your vehicle works. That way you don't spend your money on nothing.
The Greene check helps me sleep better at night, legitimately.
The Greene check, man. Everyone talks about this blue check. You know, it's about the Greene check over at eBay Motors, man. So everybody go check that out at ebaymotors.com. Let's go ride. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. And we're back, everybody, here on the Locked On Padres, Locked On Tigers crossover special for this lovely Friday, July 21st. Very cool. Very good vibes. Yeah, man, let's keep talking about it. So people are probably familiar with the big players on the Padres, right? But with the Tigers, you know, I do think it's interesting. They're one all-star this year, Michael Lorenzen. A little bit of a meme because there's a meme player every year for bad teams. We could discuss that. I've talked about on my podcast, my issues with every team having an all-star or whatever. But Michael Lorenzen has been actually pretty good for the most part. He doesn't strike literally anybody out. That's fine, though. It's okay. He's been successful. In fact, since, I don't know if you knew this, Scott, since June 21st, over the last month of baseball, the top 7, hold on, let me say, in the top 10 in terms of ERA, Michael Lorenzen's number 8. Not too shabby, man. He's been pitching all right.
Yeah, dude, I tweeted this out yesterday. He has not given up a run yet in the month of July, and that's 3 starts. Like plus, I mean, you can throw his 1 inning in the All-Star game in there too. He pitched shutout ball, so legitimately, he has. You know, he was like you said, like the meme player when they first announced it. They announced it. 3.49. Like he literally in 3 starts has lowered his ERA from well over 4 to now a sub 3.5. And yeah, he deserves all the credit in the world. And when we talk about the trade deadline outlook there a little bit later, like he is certainly one of the front runners in the, you know, Tigers circle of like players who are getting shopped and are very likely to get moved because he's just on a 1-year deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, well, not to the same extent as the Tigers, it seems like starting pitching is kind of the strength of both of these teams right now.
Yeah.
Or at least the most reliable thing of both of these teams. Obviously, the top end talent of the Padres lineup can outbeat what's the top end talent of the Tigers lineup, but they haven't been super productive. But this pitching, look, Blake Snell, ever since June 21st, he has the best ERA in baseball, 0.82. And Joe Musgrove has the 5th best ERA in baseball at 1.41. For those curious, Michael Lorenzen's at 2.20. Like this is starting pitching, and just in general, the, you know, Tigers earn run average, they're 18th, but batting average against their 9th and whip their 5th. That's not too bad for a team.
Yeah, they don't walk people.
Yeah, they don't walk people. That is definitely a plus. Don't get me wrong. Like you do not want to give up free passes, obviously. But this Tigers team, that seems to be what's been keeping them in it, because the offense has certainly not been not great. 29th in batting average, 28th in on base, 26th in home runs, 28th in runs, and 29th in slugging percentage. Not numbers you want to be a part of. So Padres fans, it can be worse. Can you talk about some of those Tigers players in the lineup? Who is the only one that maybe has been delivering? What's going on with Torkelson? What's going on with just the overall kind of offensive landscape for the Tigers?
For sure, yeah. Well, first off, the pitching absolutely. I mean, like I said, like last year's team was one of the worst offenses in modern baseball history, and the team didn't lose 100 games because the pitching has been not, you know, fantastic or anything, not a top 5 ERA in baseball, but it's been so solid and kept us in so many ball games that we probably don't deserve to be in. And this year is rather similar across the board. But yeah, you know, the offense certainly it could be a lot better. But also when comparing it to last year, it's like the fact that we're 29th in most categories in offense this year, and it feels like we're just way better than we were a year ago is super sad, but it's the reality of the situation. I think when talking about players in the lineup that actually do induce some fear, Riley Greene is really just the 1A like comfortable answer to that question. He was hurt for about 4 or 5-ish weeks, give or take a week there, missed most of June, all of June actually, and just came back right before the All-Star break, I believe, and is picking up where he left off. He's got an average of 300 on the season. He's got an OPS well over 800. He's comfortably the best hitter on this team, and they're building the franchise around him. Like that's just really all there is to it. He's going to be a phenomenal talent for the Tigers for a long time. So he's going to be the 2-hitter. I'd presume for most of the series. He may DH some games just because of the injury. They want to kind of ease him back into it. If he gets a day off, that's why as well. Torkelson's the ever controversial 1-1 pick. Hasn't necessarily been setting the world on fire. His OPS is, I think, below league average. I think it's below 730 currently at the time of this recording. But it's certainly like noticeable improvements from last year where he just really, really struggled. Has been finding a power stroke a little bit over the last 3 weeks. So we'll see what happens there. But really the best hitter you've never heard of is Kerry Carpenter, who is going to bat cleanup probably every game unless you throw a ton of lefties at him. Then Hinch loves benching him against lefties, but he's like phenomenal. Like he's maybe the worst defensive outfielder I've ever seen in my life. So like he's going to DH or just be a liability in right for a game. So you won't have to worry about him in really any other regard outside of the batter's box, but he is a legitimate power threat. He's played less than 100 major league games and is on pace for like 35 home runs based on, like if you prorate out how many homers he's hit so far, dating back to like his September call up last year onto this year. So the Riley Greene and Kerry Carpenter are going to be the 2 and 4 hitter for most games in this series. And the bottom of this lineup is not going to do anything. So you don't have to worry about that. You can kind of go on cruise control once you get past like 6. But that top of the lineup, like under the radar, Matt Vierling's had a decent year. He's an above league average hitter currently. He's really fast too. So they can put up runs at the top of the lineup. The top half has shown the ability to do so. And it's mostly around Greene and Carpenter's surgence for sure.
Absolutely. I'm wondering though, how's Miggy doing? Not even just in terms of playing. Just is he doing okay? How is he?
He's doing great, man. By all accounts, he's having the time of his life kind of on this farewell tour. Every team, when we visit their ballpark, they like give him like a farewell gift kind of thing. Like they did with, like David Ortiz and Jeter and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because for the first 6 weeks of the year, the first like month and a half of the season, he was awful. And like, like I'm not talking like, oh, like, he's got a 590 OPS or whatever. He had an OPS in the low 400s for the first like 6 weeks. He literally and we were having legitimate conversations about like, is he even going to make it through the year? Like they can't possibly just keep rolling him out there. And then since the end of May, there's no power anymore. He's not going to go yard. Yeah. He's not even going to like hit the ball in the gap probably. But I mean, he has like the batting average is somewhat respectable now. He's got an OPS in the mid 600s. Like he'll walk every once in a blue moon. But really he's just he's hitting line drives into the outfield and he's slow enough. Doesn't matter where he hit him. He's only getting a single. So like that's he's had some clutch hits too. Got a game winning hit in the 8th inning against the Royals in this past series. So yeah, he's doing well, man. The farewell tour rolls on. He seems to be having a good time with everything.
Absolutely love to hear that. Love Miggy very much. I enjoyed his, what was the 3,000th hit? It was 3,000, right? That was last year, though. That was last year. That was very cool.
That was April of last year. Yeah, that was very cool.
That was very cool. But yeah, man, I mean, with Kerry Carpenter and these guys, look, with Padres pitching, it's probably not going to be an offensive light show for the Tigers, at least in theory. Granted, this Padres team will surprise you in more ways than you could possibly imagine. But Where the Tigers offense could potentially blow up is with the bullpen. Padres bullpen has been pretty poor for a while now, ever since this series against the Giants. You might have even heard when they got walked off 2 nights in a row.
Oh, I
That was
watched.
pretty rough. Oh, you watched? Okay, see, it's just like,
Well, it's like
true. Like,
here, I mean, like I'm all the like 6:30 and 7 o'clock games all happen at the same time, but then like, there's 2:10. I'm either watching the Dodgers or the Padres pretty much every night as far as like the
gotcha.
late night games go. So
It,
yeah,
it's just so funny because I think Padres just in general, they're not used to it's I feel like I'm like shouting at a cloud, but in fact, people are like watching what's going on in San Diego. But it's weird because the majority of their like 80 whatever year history,
right,
like no one cared. So now it's like, wait, people care, and now they're seeing us completely collapse and be pretty
right.
terrible. So look,
Yeah,
it's going to be a matchup of just who can score. You know what I mean? That just seems to be
well,
that's yeah. Go ahead.
no, I mean that I agree with you. I made a joke on my Friday episode where I was like, yeah, go to FanDuel and take the under, like because like that. I mean, like the pitching for both teams has been pretty decent, and the offense for both teams has been pretty rough. But the Tigers, and I'm sure the Padres are the same, just with the talent that they have. But like the Tigers are in this weird spot where like they rocked like Spencer Strider, and then they've like gotten 2 aces, like they've crushed aces on staffs like across baseball,
Yeah.
and like knocked like all-star pitchers out of the game in like the first 3 innings, and then they'll go up against somebody who is 34 and is a career AAA player who has a 7 ERA and get absolutely diced for 7 innings.
Hmm.
That's just like where the point that they're at. It's I don't know. Like I would almost say like maybe bench move Musgrove back a day and call up some random AAA guy that even your fans have never heard of, and he would dominate us.
It's funny because that's happened for us too,
Right.
specifically from the Diamondbacks. That no hitter from some AAA guy in his major league debut against us. I think that
Yeah.
was 2 years ago. And then last year there was some really like Ryan Nelson like shut us out, and he had like
Yeah.
an 8 ERA in AAA. Yeah, I don't know why that happens, but that usually seems to be
Baseball.
like a through line for teams that are underperforming on offense. But
Yes.
really quickly, I'm going to take a sip of water, and then we're going to talk about trade deadline outlook for both of these teams because they are both in very weird spots
Very.
right after these messages. All right, everybody, we are back here on the Locked On Padres, Locked On Tigers crossover special. And we've been talking about this series, looking forward to the matchups of Lugo and all these guys and see what goes on here. We talked about, what's his name? Give me a second. Michael Lorenzen before. I want to ask you, is he just the main thing that's going to be on the radar for the Detroit Tigers? Because I don't know exactly what position the Tigers are in, but I imagine that this guy is going to be someone who's going to be coveted by teams looking to bolster their rotation a little bit.
Yeah, so the rumors have already started after
Mhm.
his outing yesterday, where he has a 21 and 2/3 scoreless inning streak. He literally has not given
Mhm.
up a run since the end of June. And after his it was against the Royals, but like after his shutout ball yesterday, um, like 2 reports came out that the Rays and the Astros are both already like calling about Michael Lorenzen. So I I know that there's a lot of people in my fan base that like the we've been given so little for so long that they're like, you know what, 5 games back, let's just like keep the band together and see what happens.
Mhm.
I don't think this front office is going to operate like that. I think like Lorenzen's on a 1 year deal and he's 32. Like he's going to get traded as far as I'm concerned. And so yeah, he's definitely the second biggest, I would say, comfortably the biggest trade piece that this team has that absolutely in my mind, will be and has to be moved at the deadline is Eduardo Rodriguez, who, like I said, last year was a complete bleep show. I mean, just a roller coaster, went MIA, like I said, for 3 months or whatever, barely pitched, wasn't even that dominant when he did pitch. Comes back into camp this year, ready to go, says he's figured everything out at home, clear mind, and was legitimately, until his injury at the end of May, legitimately like in the top 3 conversation for American League Cy Young. He had like
Mhm.
a sub 2 ERA at one point, was dominant, lefty, right? Like all this stuff going for him. And the Tigers technically have him under contract for, I believe, 3 more years after this, but he has an opt-out after this season.
Mm-hmm.
And he is not getting paid very much money. So he is 100% opting out of this contract, especially with how well he's pitched this season. He came back from injury at about the exact same time as Riley Greene, kind of right before the All-Star break there. So he's already made 2 or maybe even 3 starts since coming back. The first one was rough. The last 2 have been a lot better. And this most recent one, he went 7 innings of 2-run balls. So he's back on the horse. And just because, yes, he's under contract, but he's basically a rental as well, because there's no way he's not opting out of this contract. There's just no way. It's like 15 AAV or something like that for the way that he's been pitching is just not going to happen. So those are their 2 biggest, maybe not biggest, but like if they traded Riley Greene, obviously that'd be their biggest. But like their 2 most likely, I'll say, trade pieces, and Erod is certainly the one that's going to get you I would imagine the bigger return of the 2. But it's just weird with both of them basically being rentals, like how much are we really expecting? But like they've both been really good. So I don't know. It's this weird line to walk, and there is a world where they just say, you know what, we don't really have an offer that blows us away. We're just going to kind of sit on our hands and see what happens in the second half here.
Are you at all worried about potential sleeper agent accusations against AJ Hinch if they were to trade one of these guys to the Astros?
No, I am not. You know what? I think that AJ is the rest of AJ's career, he is going to be put under such a microscope that he is not going to be able to do anything illegal or wrong on a baseball field for the rest of his career without it being noticed. So I'm not too terribly worried, but that's not even something I thought about. So now I might be freaking out about it, I guess.
Gotcha. Hey, that's what I'm here for, man. And look, I've been on the receiving end of sleeper agents. Shout out to Mike Rizzo, GM of the Nats, giving Trey Turner and Max Scherzer to the Dodgers for nothing, just for fun. Right. That 1 year, obviously, it's been proven. I mean, go pull up the Los Angeles Times article. It's been proven. I'm not making this up at all whatsoever. But yeah, man, I mean, those 2 guys, look, Eduardo Rodriguez, like you said, struggled a tiny bit lately, but still sub-3 ERA, 2.69. The FIP is good. He's got a good F4 total, 26.8% K rate. Just a solid starter that I think he feels like the type of starter that the big ones that are gaining traction in the market are probably guys like Blake Snell, Marcus Stroman, and even maybe Max Scherzer, even if he hasn't been pitching as well this year. Eduardo Rodriguez is that starter that is like just as good or can be just as good as some of these other guys, but doesn't have the name, brand, or cachet, and ends up being like the actual player. Just that's how the sport works, right? You'll trade Hall of Fame pitchers in Max Scherzer, but Eduardo Rodriguez will actually be the one who ends up carrying whoever the heck. To the World
he can give
Series,
you
right?
innings too at a very minimum, man. Like you
Exactly.
shouldn't be bringing him in to be the ace of like your team in October, but if you're playing in October, you probably aren't. Your team's probably good enough where he's not going to be, but he is going to be such a valuable like 3rd rotation arm for a playoff team in the last 2 months of the season, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe the Orioles, maybe they want to have 2 Rodriguez's. That would be interesting.
I didn't think about that.
Two Rodriguez. One has been disappointing. The other one hasn't. So
right, yeah, for real. I do want to ask where you guys stand too, and just get your thoughts on it, because like obviously a well cited like disappointment of a season. Is it? I mean, you I don't know, like you have a ton of people that in theory you could trade, and I'm just wondering, like, is it full like, like we're out of it, we're just gonna get as much value and just blow this thing up completely, or is it like a soft launch kind of thing? We're like, oh, we'll trade the rentals, but like we're still gonna keep most of the core together. Like you threw out so much money in like long-term pieces this offseason. I'm wondering what I'm assuming that's kind of a controversial topic. I'm just wondering what's going to happen going into the deadline on your end too.
No, yeah. I mean, the Padres, if they wanted to, they could make all roads lead through them at the trade deadline if they wanted to. They have the pitchers with Blake Snell. You could even say someone like Michael Wacha. Seth Lugo might even have a little bit of value. 2 guys that have some weird contracts as well. Lugo in particular might go get a bigger deal in the offseason. And they've got Josh Hader. And then if they wanted to, They have Juan Soto, right? If they were really crazy and hate Padres fans, they could also shop Ha-Seong Kim, who costs basically nothing and is a top 15 F4 player right now.
Elite defender. I love watching him play
He's the
baseball
best.
so much.
Everyone, people who hate the Padres love watching Ha-Seong Kim play. He's amazing. He's
The
amazing.
man, dude.
He's the dude.
Seriously, I love watching him play baseball, man.
It's just every time I see him, just cheers me up. Every single time I see him, it's amazing. In an otherwise pretty dreadful season, I don't think that they're going to do a giant fire sale. I think the only way that they would do that is if coming out of the All-Star break, they had gotten swept and lost whatever the number of games after the All-Star break is. Let's say 14 or whatever. If they had lost like 12 or 14, then maybe they would have considered that. But I think it's much more likely that they do maybe they even go for a buy and sell. I think that I could see a world where if they're not performing very well, they trade particularly Blake Snell and Josh Hader, because those two guys are going to be free agents for sure after this offseason. Actually, we just had some comments come out from Blake Snell who said that he'd actually prefer to just stay put and not be traded, which to me reeks of, hey, I know I'm getting a bag. I've been going crazy. You know what I mean? He's like, you know what? I'm going to chill behind this team that, while disappointing, has an incredible defense. So I'm cool with just staying where I am, boosting up my numbers. He had his first bad start yesterday against the Blue Jays, in which he walked 7, but still only gave up a run. So that just shows you how dominant he's been, even working out when all of his stuff hasn't been working. So I think the Padres, they'll sell a little bit, but it's still really like they're in a weird spot. They're trying out guys who haven't even been effective in the minors because they don't really have a real DH. Not great. Matt Carpenter's been really bad. So that could be a piece that they try to improve in. Just find literally any random bat out there that's on the market could probably do better. I'm not even talking about the big ones like Candelario and Ohtani. I'm just saying, I like how I cited Candelario before Ohtani there. That's just, I don't know, whatever. Like not even in that tier, just some random type of bat that might be okay. I could see them potentially doing that, but it's the question, man. And then Conspiracy Javier is wondering, like, I can't get past the Soto. You trade everything for him, and you clearly still had money to spend on Manny Machado, on Xander Bogaerts, on Jake Cronenworth, on Yu Darvish, on Robert Suarez. You extend all these guys, in the case of Xander Bogaerts, sign him, but then nothing for Soto. So part of me is wondering, is it impossible that they trade him? It's unlikely. We haven't heard anything. I think for a player of his caliber, we would have heard something, but it's still just weird. It's just weird to me that maybe they couldn't reach a deal. Hey, maybe he's like, did he overshoot his shot? I mean, this is you talked about heinous defense earlier from your team. Juan Soto's pretty bad too. So I'm wondering, is he actually just a first baseman DH for future? Like, that's how bad he's been in the outfield. So I don't know. I don't think they're trading him because he's just so valuable and they have too much committed in this team right now that you might as well just keep him for the next year. It's not like he's a free agent after this year. He's got one more year left. So, but again, Conspiracy Reyes, I'm just saying, if you hear over the weekend Juan Soto rumblings, you heard it here first. I just think it's so weird that they spent on literally everything except for the guy that they trade their whole future for. But I don't know. It's gonna be a fun deadline, by the way.
Right. That's why I ask, because like we're the Tigers' next 2 series are against obviously y'all and then against the Angels, who are like also a team that has been underperforming and is trying to claw themselves back into a wild card hunt. So like, it's so fascinating that, like, I'm sure Padres fans have circled this weekend on their calendar and they're like, oh, let's go take 2 of 3 or 3 of 3 from Detroit and try and like claw our way back in it. And maybe we can win enough games here leading up to the deadline where we're not going to have a huge fire sale. And the Tigers fans are like, wow, the Padres have been underperforming. Maybe we can take 2 of 3 at home from the Padres so that we're not having a huge fire. So like both teams are really in a somewhat similar mindset, in the sense of like, it obviously how we got here is very different. We've been bad. You guys had a lot of expectations, but where they stand right now, like both teams are like, oh, like this, we could maybe win some ball games here and change the outlook of what happens at the deadline. And obviously both teams can't win the series. So I'm very interested in what happens.
I'm very interested too, because I have to be. That's what we do. It's our job. we have to be
Absolutely.
interested in. So, hey, maybe we might be lying. We might hate our teams and not give a flying. That's not true. We love the sport very much, despite how much it seems to hate us both with our teams. But Scott, dude, this has been a blast, man. Finally, happy we finally got this podcast done, this crossover. Do you have anything else you would like to plug by any chance for the good folks out there?
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me on Twitter at Bentley Scotty. Our show is at Locked On Tigers, super creative at there. And then if there's any San Diego Padres, Detroit Red Wings fans in existence, I also host Locked On Red Wings. You can go check that out, LO_Red Wings as well. So
that's right. A man of many sports. Scott, again, it's been a blast. And everybody else, thank you for tuning in to the Locked On Padres podcast. Look forward to next week for both of us as well for Tigers Info. Honestly, look forward to every Locked On pod because everybody's going to have stuff coming out for the trade deadline. A deadline that I don't know about you, but I feel like it's heating up a little bit. It looked like it was going to be a bad deadline. I don't know. I'm not convinced. I think we're going to get a good one. I think it's going to be quiet, right? I think last year's actually wasn't great, but it's just that the Soto thing kind of is like over everybody's head. The year before was, oh my God. That was an incredible all-time deadline. But this year, don't sleep on it, baseball nerds. I think we're going to get some good stuff. I'm pumped. But until next time, guys, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful. We'll see you next time.